Hi, my name's Nyree and I've got two adopted sons and I'm running this adoption support channel. Today we're going to talk about the things that cause pain and joy in adoption. And disclaimer at the beginning, I can only talk from my own experiences. So for us, we had our boys about 9 years ago as foster children. To be really honest with you, the condition that the boys were in when we received them was really poor. They had been very neglected and there were other traits of abuse as well. And in the UK, the way that our system works is there has to be proof of significant harm, and so social workers will work really hard to put together evidence if they believe a child not only needs to be removed from their home and brought into care but actually adopted as well. It might be the same for you in your country. And so there was a long chronology of incidents that had happened with the boys, which I won't go into, but suffice to say they were pretty horrific. And when you look down the list, you kept thinking, why weren't they removed then? And it was really sad to see and to read, and very sad to see the condition that they came into when we first started fostering them. And if I'm honest with you, as a foster carer, that's what I saw time and time again, that children were very either neglected or abused or both. For me then, looking at when children go out for adoption, there's a lot of joy in seeing that happen for that child. But I appreciate that that's not going to be the case everywhere. Sometimes children are given up for adoption or handed over for adoption when actually, if circumstances were very different for the parent or the family, then they wouldn't be. And this is the deepest pain of all. If you know anybody who's lost a child by bereavement or had to give up a child or anything like that, you will know, maybe you have yourself, you will know how deep that pain goes. And I can't think of anything worse than having to give up a child. So this is the pain, isn't it, for many families, I'm sure, across the world, who then end up with their children in adoption that, for whatever reason, they haven't been able to care for them. So it could just be finance, it could be disability, it could be that they're younger and they don't feel that they're able to cope. Children go for adoption when, in different circumstances, that mother might have been able to keep that child, and that is where the pain deeply lies. And often that's how the media presents situations as well, that the child has had to be given up and that actually that child rightfully belongs back with the birth mother. And I don't think any of us would argue with the fact that the birth mother is where the child needs to be and needs to stay. But unfortunately, there is a need for adoption, and unfortunately some situations are directly abusive with children or very neglectful, and so children are just not able to stay in those type of environments. And that's our experience, that I don't really know where our sons would be, and even if they would have survived, honestly, if they'd had to stay in that environment. And so that's my lived experience of having them in as foster children and having to nurture everything for them, from speech which they had none of, from experience to just normal food, a full nurturing experience from the beginning. That's my lived experience. And so the reason why adopters step forward to take children on from the joy perspective is, for some, obviously they've not been able to have children, and for others who have, the key reason why adopters do what they do is they want to love a child. Now, sometimes you will hear love is not enough, and to a certain extent I agree, on its own it isn't, but love has to be the starting point for any adoption. An adoptive couple or a single adopter needs to be feeling that they have a real deep desire to love another child or a child and bring a child into their home. The good part of adoption, if you look at it in its wholeness, is that somebody somewhere, some adult somewhere, wants to love a child. And yes, there are charlatans out there. Yes, there are people who want to make money out of adoption. And yes, there are circumstances in every country, I'm sure, where an adoption is not done for the right motivation. But if we're going to put that to one side, the real reason why somebody wants to adopt is to love a child. That's the first thing. The next thing that adopter is looking to do is bring the child into a family environment. Now, the difference between that and not having a family environment, if I can give an example, is I know one of my foster children is in a residential unit and she's greatly cared for and she's doing extremely well, but that's not a family environment and it's different. There aren't consistent people that she can identify with and call her own. That's hard to see. As I say, that gives that child someone to call their own for the rest of their lives. And that again is different from foster care, because for foster care, that child is there for a time, but they're not going to be there for the rest of their lives necessarily. And even if they are, they do not have the same rights as an adopted child. So love and family. And of course, that brings identity, because a child can say, this is where I belong, this is who I am, this is what I've come from, and it's all wrapped up in their identity. Now, another thing that adopted families like to do is to give children safe care routines. You could love a child and bring them into your family, but if you don't feed them or clothe them or put a roof over their heads, then that is not going to be a great adoption. Every adopter that has a child wants to then provide for them, give them what they need to have to grow, develop and thrive. Another thing that adopters get joyful over is being able to give guidance to their children. You can have everything, but if you don't guide your children and you don't give them any boundaries, you don't give them a safe space to grow in, then you're not really going to be able to have the best. I think for those of us who've adopted, we realise that adoption's not easy. And the reason why it's not easy is because there is always another history there. There is always a birth family. And that birth family could be someone that we feel that we can't identify with, we struggle with, or it might be a birth family that you've got a more open relationship with, but that history is always there. And so our adopted children don't come to us as a given, they come to us as a gift, and we have to recognise that there is a whole other world behind them that has to be part of what we do. For some adopters that's okay, they can cope with that, and some adopters find that really hard. It can be difficult, I guess, when your children get to a certain age and they want to know more about the birth family, and so my advice is try to be as open as you can from the beginning, even if you've had a really young child, because this is what is a struggle really, is that child is yours. By rights, legally, that child is yours, but that child will always have that history and was always somebody else's. And so that's something that is painful for adopters at times. Of course, the children know that too, unless you decide not to tell your child, which is up to you. But most children, of course, find out that they're adopted. So that makes them curious. And children don't understand, do they, that the reasons, deep reasons why they might have had to leave their birth family. You can tell them and explain that, but children don't have the concepts, of course, to understand what abuse really is. They don't understand what neglect is. They just don't understand why their birth family couldn't really look after them, however much you explain it to them. And of course, that's something that we end up having to explain to them, and it's painful. So I said in one of my videos recently that one of my sons was wondering if the birth family were seeking him out, and I had to explain that they probably weren't, and these were the reasons why. He wasn't upset about it, but he was trying to process why that family might not be how we were. So we would go out and try and seek for him if somebody else had him. So why weren't the birth family trying to seek him out? And trying to explain those complexities brings a lot of pain. And so adoption is two-sided. It's two-sided, two-faceted. I don't think the media is always fair in its representation of it, if I'm honest with you. I think it goes for the sensationalised stories and ideas, because adopters at heart are nearly always people who have given up a lot and who recognise that they're there to do a great job with their child or children and want to go all out for a child that they take into their home. And so I don't think we need to be praised for that, because that's who we've chosen to be. I don't really like it when people say it's wonderful that the boys have you, because I think there's always someone who could do a better job than us. And I actually think that it was kind of a calling anyway to have the boys. So I don't really think that we're doing anything exceptional other than what we feel driven to do, which is to provide a loving home and guidance and nurture these boys. It's more something that's deep inside of you. If you've not adopted yet and you're thinking of it, what will happen if you're kind of going to do this is it will keep coming back to you over and over again. That the subject of adoption will keep coming back to you until actually in the end you've got to go for it. So I hope that helps you to think about the deeper issues around adoption, and I hope you will accept that there's a disclaimer on it, because I know everybody's situation is different, and I know for adoptees especially there can be a lot of hurt there. So I just want to say I understand that as far as I can from my point of view. If you've enjoyed that video, please subscribe, and hopefully I will see you on my channel if you're an adopter or a potential adopter. Thank you.